Hi there and welcome to episode 57 of the ADHD Adults podcast. I'm James Brown, the one who feels pain every time he records this podcast. And as usual, I'm joined by a reverse paracetamol, the man whose mere presence is painful for everybody around him, Dr. Alex Connor. Hi, Alex.
Yo-vember, because it's November.
You've done a year of this now, haven't you? I'm kind of guessing, is it getting difficult? You know, you're getting to the point where you've stretched your ability to pick unfunny hellos to that. Anyway, how are you or whatever?
I'm excellent, thank you. Very, very happy. We even popped up into 9th position, didn't we, on the Apple Mental Health podcast chart thingy for Great Britain. That's the official term. So, I mean, the numbers are stupid, always increasing, very silly. And one of our ADHD army, that's what I started. Although that would be a terrible army, or a really good army for a bit, and then, you know, not great when it got boring. Anywho, we got a letter.
I mean, just carry on.
That's right, James. It's from Robert from Kidderminster, and it says, I heard your episode on masking. I've been masking ever since James was born. I've been literally wearing a mask. I'm ashamed of him. Thanks for your honesty, Robert. Don't blame you at all. I've been sent a real letter. Definitely not shouting in the background.
I thought that was somebody shouting the letter at you. So, let's hear this real letter. Shouted.
I'm going to shut the door.
Okay.
No shouting, please.
This is better. This is a podcast with just me on it, which I'm sure everyone would probably hate, to be honest. So read out the real letter then, Alex.
The real letter is, it's from John, not his real name. Actually, it is his real name, but I didn't ask, so let's say it isn't. I'm reading out some of it anyway. I've just stumbled across your podcast and binged the first 14 episodes in a day. And holy shit, it's all so bloody relatable. Thank you so much for putting it all into words and sharing your experiences. It validates my experience a lot. I first realized I might have ADHD from watching ADHD social media accounts and have been hyper-focused on the subject since then. Very also relatable. A load of it's redacted because it's personal. And then I'm 45 and also redacted. And my life has always been bloody difficult compared to most people. I get that. But I've become a master of masking my inadequacies. And now I feel like I might have an explanation for this and have been able to give myself a bit of a break instead of constantly beating myself up, which has been exhausting. Anyway, I feel like I go on forever, so I'm going to stop now, but I'll probably be in touch again. Hope you don't mind. Thank you so much. I really mean it. John, his real name. We really don't mind. James minds.
I mind that this. I mean, that was quite a long one, John. Not his real name. It is his real name. If you're going to get Alex to read something out, can you just make them brief? I mean, just as a bit of advice for people writing in, because I don't like listening to him, and I don't think the listeners do as well. But John, not his real name. It is his real name. Thank you so much for getting in touch.
Yeah. Don't make them brief. I like them all. Internationally, we unbelievably have reached 133 countries. We have no idea. No idea. Honestly, I'm going to say Morocco.
This really is. I don't know if you've seen the film Crash. The one about car crash is not the one about sexy times. No, sorry, not about sexy times. The really overtly heavy-handed one about racism. But this is a little bit like watching that slow car crash moment when you do this, Alex.
I haven't seen either of them. We are, of course, both bewildered and grateful to all of our listeners, all 15. So this week, we'd like to say a big marhaban to our Moroccan listener, assuming you understand garbled Darija. Although, James, I realised that 90% of people use this sort of...
Realised or read?
Vernacular. Well, that's how... Well, I mean, that's how I went squeaky. That's how I realised. How do you realise things?
But I don't know. I don't know. You're going to tell me what the derivation of the word realise is, but anyway, we'll move on. As usual, this a really startling example of how not to do a podcast of a podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. Last week, we talked with Mrs. ADHD in a massively chaotic episode about ADHD and masking. And this week, we're focusing on something which is one of those somatic comorbidities, if you like. So one of those issues which isn't psychiatric, but is often found in people with ADHD, and that's pain. It's something that I know a lot about, both from having to work with Alex and to live with Mrs. ADHD. But we're going to ask the question, and hopefully Alex the Psychoeducation Monkey, and then he called you something really bad then. My God, that was a good save. We're asking, what are the links between ADHD and pain? As usual, those three parts are going to be the evidence-based psychoeducation delivered by the monotonous, barely human collection of round-faced meat, Alex the Psychoeducation Monkey.
Hello.
Our personal reflections on ADHD and pain, of which, as usual, I have lots. And then the final bit will be some spunk trumpeting about how to deal with the subject. Well, now, how not to deal with pain or something else. So, Alex, in many ways, life is pain when it's spent with you. So, fire away, Shrek.
Thank you, donkey. Scottish there.
Oh, God.
So acute pain, immediate acute pain, obviously very necessary. Touch a hot pan and you move your hand away. When something causes almost constant pain, chronic pain, any chronic pain is really a major health problem. This damages the life of or the quality of life of millions of people. The prevalence of chronic pain, nearly 10%, about 8% in general population. A recent news report on the BBC suggested it might be as many as a quarter of us living with chronic pain. So this is a big issue.
The Homeless magazine.
No, thanks, James. I'm just saying.
Just checking.
Is that what you're doing? The big issue joke?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But where does I like it? Where does ADHD come in? And when we talk about pain, why are we talking about ADHD and pain? Some research has found that ADHD adults report changes to perceptual functions, or how we recognize and interpret sensory stimuli. That means, James, how we feel stuff.
Thanks, Al.
This appears, you're welcome. This appears, Professor, you are, this fake professor. This appears to be particularly altered in the perception of pain. James, that means how we know we have a boo-boo. On top of this, chronic pain can cause increased impulsivity, and also induces attentional and cognitive deficits. So, vicious cycle, right? Mo ADHD, mo pain, mo pain, mo ADHD. Mo Pain is my rapper name.
I shiver, I shudder when you say these things. You know, it makes me, my skin crawls.
Well, what links ADHD and pain? I mean, I'm about to obviously just say dopamine in a moment.
Yeah.
So there is some evidence that suggests that dopamine, one of the neurotransmitters which is busted in ADHD, James wrote that small line of the script, is also involved in how we feel pain. So dopamine is there for what we call processing of pain. An example of this research was in patients with Parkinson's disease, not ADHD, but a disease where dopamine levels are reduced. These patients reported more pain sensitivity. On top of this, painful clinical conditions like the horrible sounding burning mouth syndrome, or fibromyalgia, restless leg syndrome, which we talk about a lot in ADHD land, are thought to be linked to abnormalities in dopaminergic neurotransmission. That's dopamine going around your brain box, James.
A couple of things. Firstly, I bet you said fibroblasts when you were a scientist in the lab, didn't you? Because most people call it fibromyalgia.
Do they?
Yes.
Most people say a lot of things, don't they, James? A lot of wrong things.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, the other thing is, again, we often talk about dopamine is like the shorthand for ADHD, and, you know, other neurotransmitters are available. But is there anything that this wonderful chemical doesn't fuck up when it's not there?
Yeah, we really need it, don't we? Right, so let's focus on ADHD. See what I did? Shit joke. Studies have shown the following. One of my boring lists alert, so clacks on.
Woo! Oh, Sam,
adults with ADHD. That's really out of character. Whoop, whoop. Am I right, ladies? Amazing. Adults with ADHD seem to have more chronic pain than non-ADHD adults. A lot more. As many as 80% of adults with ADHD reporting widespread pain, compared with, it depends who you talk to, about 17% of normals. Can't say that. Interestingly, you know, in a way, pain has been linked with heightened muscle tone that some adults with ADHD have, not us. We're 47. This might indicate that chronic pain in ADHD could be a long-term secondary effect of heightened muscle tone. There's a new but as yet unproven idea. James wrote theory in the script, which upset me greatly. An unproven hypothesis is that inflammation in the brain underlies altered pain perception and pain sensitization, like how likely we are to feel it in people with ADHD. As an aside, depression is increasingly thought to be caused as well by inflammation in the brain, which could also be partly infection and just general inflammation, as opposed to inappropriate neurotransmitter levels. That can lead on to low neurotransmitter levels, which is why maybe Prozac and those serotonin things work, even though it isn't necessarily because of them. Boring, I know. Anywho, as usual, not all the research agrees. One study reported that reduced pain perception was associated with ADHD, suggesting children and adolescents without MPH treatment, Ritalin really, were reported to have lower pain perception compared to both non-ADHD people and ADHD patients medicated with methylphenidate, Ritalin. It's important to remember that studies are small numbers, especially in ADHD, because no fucker will fund us. So it's difficult to generalize to all ADHD people, and adults different to children, and we're all a bit different. Point is, ADHD doesn't necessarily mean you have more pain. Might do. Probably does. Might mean you have less. Could be, depend on the person.
So it could be either or, that you have less or more pain because of your ADHD. I think you've hinted at this in the last, simples in the last bit. So I suppose the usual question, as the Verve once obviously got completely wrong: do the drugs work?
They might do. Following methylphenidate treatment, both cold pain threshold and cold pain tolerance in ADHD. A lot of fun doing those experiments. Whack them in a bath. So the subjects increased significantly. Sorry, the tolerance and the threshold. Yeah. So the amount they can take and how long they can take it for increased significantly in ADHD adults who were treated compared to ADHD adults who weren't treated, not compared to the rest of the population. So it would appear that for some pain, a separate study in women with ADHD, I mean, probably the first time we've said that, reported that this, honestly, the lack of representation in research, let's not do that yet, reported that women with ADHD who had ongoing treatment with stimulants reported a significantly lower prevalence of chronic widespread pain than those not treated. Small study.
Well done, concisely and less monotonously done than usual. I'm going to put you on the spot now, Al. There's some evidence that swearing whilst you're receiving a painful stimuli reduces or increases the threshold and certainly increases tolerance. I don't know if you know anything about whether we get dopamine release from swearing. Do you think?
Yeah, exactly. And not just dopamine as well, but noradrenaline. And it has to be swearing in a language where you understand that socially that's inappropriate. So if I swear in German where I live, because they don't really mean anything to me, I wouldn't get the same effect. It has to be socially relevant.
Well, the German people don't mean anything to you.
No, they do. They kind of do. But because the words don't, or if somebody speaks English as a second language in England, they're swearing. You might have heard it actually. They swear like troopers, right?
Yeah.
Often. And so yes, it does. It gives us this reaction, and that can reduce pain. Incidentally, people with ADHD swear more, and people who are more emotionally intelligent tend to swear more. And I like that fact.
Well, that was fucking marvelous. But it leads us into a break. So we'll come back in part 2 for our personal reflections. See you in a bit. Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
What are you doing?
No, I said, are you bringing us back
welcome back to episode 57 of the ADHD Adults Podcast. We are talking about ADHD and pain. And this is part 2, where almost always we do personal reflections on ADHD and pain. Brace yourself, Sheila. James is going to bang on a lot now because honestly, you should see the text on this. James, you might as well start because I don't want to use the word wuss.
That's pain shaming, Alex. So
Ableism.
I'm going to start this backwards from what I've written down. The first thing is I think I have an embarrassingly low pain threshold. In that some of the little niggles, particularly sharp pains. So our cats, if they even put one claw near my skin, I scream and they jump off my lap. Mrs. ADHD will let them claw at her legs, no sense, no feeling on her face, for hours, and she's fine. But it's absolutely, I can't bear it. If I stub my toe, then good God, the swear words come out then. So I do have a low pain threshold, but alongside that, I've had a lot of shit go on in my life. As you know, I had something called a spondylolisthesis, which is a bit like breaking your back when I was a nurse and 20 years old. So my spine's been screwed together. It means that I'm in pain every day from when I wake up to when I go to sleep. I'm waiting a little bit of an operation. So chronic pain, that's related to something, but I don't know if my pain threshold is altered. And therefore it's difficult when you go and see a doctor for a pain related issue. You're often asked to fill in a pain questionnaire. And that score will be, what's your pain today from 1 to 10? 1 being I'm pain free and 10 being terrible. And I've seen this clinically as a nurse and also in these clinics. And lots of people will say, oh, it's a 10. It's a 10. And I think, is it? Because, being slowly dipped into a vat of acid or having a bear chew your flesh off while you're alive, I'm guessing that's a 10. But
doing a podcast with your wife.
Yeah, that is a 12, Alex.
12.
Doing a podcast with Mrs. ADHD. But having a bad back, having really, really painful knees and hips, because pain is subjective, I don't see it as being a linear scale. I think it's probably exponential. I think the difference between 9 and 10 is probably bigger than the difference between. Don't fucking do that. I do know what exponential means. So whenever I go, and I've been so many appointments at the Royal Orthopaedic in Birmingham recently, I was actually told to increase my score. They were giving me some injections, and they said, well, what's your pain like this morning? I went, it's probably a 3. And they went, I'd put 8 down if I was you. And I went, okay.
Yeah.
I thought 8. That's probably having my hand cut off or something. But
this is such a classic West Midlands thing, James, that you do, that I hear. So I lived in Birmingham for a long time, never was a Brummie. But what I hear from Brummies is, are you all right? Are you happy? Oh, can't complain. Are you in pain now? Oh, could be worse. Your hand's falling off. Yeah, but people have it worse than me. I honestly think this is your cultural background of not complaining.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. I do complain, obviously, but it might be that. But I feel almost disingenuous saying when I'm in a lot of pain, oh, it's an 8 out of 10, because I think, no, it can't be an 8 out of 10, even though it's really painful. And I'm 47, Alex. I have inherited from Robert from Kidderminster the shittest skeleton that one can inherit. He's had bilateral hip and knee replacements, and arthritis and Paget's disease and all these issues, which I probably
explains his handwriting.
It really does. And therefore I've got arthritis in my knees. It's interesting because restless legs, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, is one of these issues related to pain, although it's not painful. I have periodic limb movement disorder, which is the sexy thrusty thing I do at night, but I also get restless legs, which is a horrible thing to go through because you can't get to sleep, because you've got this just urge to move and kick out your legs and rub them against the quilts. So my relationship,
we're going to do a whole episode, aren't we, James, on restless leg syndrome, because it's hugely linked.
It is.
Can I do a spoiler alert? It's not clear yet if restless leg and ADHD are comorbid or if they're both a consequence of the sleeping problems that come with. But it's going to be a good episode.
What's interesting as well, though, is the treatments for restless leg syndrome include dopaminergic drugs, the carbidopa and stuff like that. So dopamine again is involved with this. Fucking hell, I forgot what I was saying. Well done. I did not. No, headaches. Now I get migraines, which we're going to do in another episode. But even a normal headache that's not a migraine, I can't do anything. I have to go to bed and sit down. I've got a headache. Whereas most people, Samantha, Mrs. ADHD, will plow through with any pain that she's got. Full on flu and just feeling like you can't move. She'll go to work. I'm saying, have a sick day. No, I'm all right. Whereas I famously will drop out of any work-related activity if I've got a nail which is slightly crooked. So my pain threshold is ridiculously low, even though I do live with kind of chronic pain every day. And kind of question to some extent how bad it is, and often feel fraudulent when I go and see a GP or a surgeon, thinking, yeah, but is it just my low pain threshold, or is it really painful? So it's something I live with every day. Parts of it are definitely related, I think, to my ADHD, and parts are related to my shit genetics. How about you?
And RSD as well with ADHD, you can't like saying, "Oh yes, I'm in a lot of pain," and then them go,
Yeah.
"I can see you're lying." God, or not that they ever would, but you think they might because.
Well, no, but you say that, but I've had that said to me when I've had. So I just to give you an insight into my back, I can't feel my left thigh; it's numb. When my back is particularly bad, I can't feel my jewels either; they go numb, and my toes go numb as well. And I also get leg pain, and neuropathic pain when a nerve is irritated is a fucking ball ache, because there's practically nothing that can effectively stop it. Try heat, try ice. There are some horrible drugs like gabapentin, which are just awful things to take. And I've been to a surgeon when I've got absolutely crippling pain going down my leg, and they've scanned my back, did an MRI, and said, well, the nerve's not being irritated, so we don't know why you've got that pain. And you do feel like, oh, okay, well, yeah. I'm a fraud then, because apparently, and this is the thing that a lot of doctors do, they treat the result or the scan and not the patient. So instead of saying, well, we've got to work out why you've got this pain, they just say, your scan's fine, off you pop.
Indeed. So I've known James for a long time. I've known his chronic pain. I've been there when he's had his operations, and I've seen him struggled, even though he's had to come to a meeting with me, and yet I still just called him a wuss. I feel that reflects 20% badly on me,
20%,
80% on him.
It is mostly my fault. What about your relationship with pain and your ADHD, Al?
Interesting, because what it sounds like you're saying is some pains you don't recognize and some little ones you do. I have got a weird relationship with pain. And when I think about it through the ADHD lens, which I never used to do, I've started to understand myself a bit better. So I'm two things. One of them, actually, I am extremely pain resilient, like a Greek god, James. Greek god I am.
Like a golden god.
And
Dennis.
The other thing I am is a massive great wuss with zero pain tolerance, like you. And the difference is completely random.
Yeah.
As a couple of examples, I currently have a torn meniscus in my right knee, and in my right knee, a torn MCL. I did them both at the same time, and I just ignore it. I just swap running for cycling. And I carry on, even like 3 days afterwards. It's constantly, I can feel it. If I twist, I kind of drop to the floor and I just chuckle and get back up again, because some physical things I don't feel like other people.
Ding.
And because I'm not paying attention, I think. And here's the weird stuff.
Yeah.
If I have like a splinter or a little thing in my eye, or my blankie in bed isn't lying properly on me, it physically hurts. And I can't think about anything else. Inappropriate emotional reactions, both positive. I know. I thought you'd like blankie. Both too much and too little. It's like and I think that it's possible. Not science clacks on. Hi, DJ Derek Bowie. I think that I have inappropriate emotional reactions to pain as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
This could just be a me thing, but the more I talk to our community, this is what we pay attention to. And one of the guys on Discord, our Discord channel, said yesterday, ex services, he said, "Oh God, I've now got knees like soggy Kit Kats." I really like that. It reminded me of you and your skeleton, James.
Yeah, my rubbish skeleton. Can we just dig into a little bit of that before we go to the game that I haven't written, obviously? So the paying attention to it thing, I think, is interesting, because I know that when I hyperfocus, which we talked previously about it, there was one day in particular where I think I did 15 hours straight work from like 4 a.m. till whatever 15 hours after 4 o'clock is. I can't work it out. Scholars insist it's impossible to. I was sat down in a position that after that period of time, my back was fucking killing me, and it would have been hurting throughout that period, but I absolutely didn't feel it, which I think is fascinating, that I was so hyper-focused singularly that I didn't drink, I didn't eat, I didn't get up and have a piss, but I also didn't feel pain. And I think that's fascinating. And I don't know whether or not the different types of pain, acute or chronic, for example, might be sensed differently because of the fact that we can at different times pay attention to our body and at other times be utterly focused on something else.
Yeah, and there's a few chemicals that are pain response, substance P, CGRP, and a few other ones in the brain, and they're not all the same at all times.
Interesting. Right, I'm going to have to make a game up on the fly now, if that's okay.
Well, I chose laptops last week, didn't I?
You did, so you're gonna have to have mums. You're gonna have to have mums because that's the only one I've got on the Word document in front of me. That's a very good thing. Right. So, last week Sam and I completely ADHD'd my mum's birthday, and I want you to work out the way in which we ADHD'd it. And there's two things in each option here. So we did because we didn't.
I haven't got a working memory, right?
Yes. But you can write things down. I've seen your horrible scribbled childish crayon handwriting. So did we call her on the wrong day and forget to get her a present? That's option one. Did we, option two, not charge the electric car, have to turn around, so we're visiting her, jumped into the other car, but we left the presents in the electric car? Or did we get her a birthday card that was for fathers and a jumper that was not the right size, even after we've been given the size to get?
Oh, that's a good one. Right then, I have written it down.
Well done.
In my crayon handwriting.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to my normal technique which my winning, I think we can agree, technique of saying, I don't think you got the wrong day because I think your mum's birthday is on Halloween, and so you wouldn't forget that because Halloween is the only time you look normal in the street.
You did turn it around into an insult. Well done, sir.
Yeah, I did. I think that it's not the electric car and using the other car because your other car is a child's pedal car, which wouldn't get all the way to your mum's house. So I'm going to say father card and jumpers.
Spectacularly wrong.
Oh,
I know. I thought you were going to get this one. Yeah, we didn't charge we charged it, but for some reason it didn't charge the electric car, and we didn't check when we got in. So we drove just before. Luckily, the motorway, I looked, and it's got 40 miles in it, and that's more than the distance there and back. So I was like, "Can you text her? We'll go back and we'll jump in the Mini." So we drove back in like rush hour traffic, got out, jumped in the Mini, forgetting that A, the Mini didn't have a license plate on the back, and then B, that we'd left the presents in the electric car. So then we drove off again, rush hour traffic, just about to get to the motorway, and it clicked in my head, where are the presents? In the car. So we had to message her and say, we'll come tomorrow night because we've just fucked everything up.
You really have. And I fucked up the answer. I didn't get to choose. I wouldn't have chosen that one. So it doesn't count.
What do you mean you didn't get to choose? You chose option 3.
Yeah, but I used to get 2 choices of subject and you forgot to write a second one.
Oh, fuck off. I mean, that is...
Agree to disagree. Agree that doesn't count.
Pathetic. Anyway, on that one.
I'd have definitely chosen Dad's.
Yep. Right, then. Dad's. Ding. It's time for a break, thank God. We'll come back in part 3 for some top spunk trumpeting. See you then. Spunk trumpet.
Hello, welcome back to episode 57 of the ADHD Adults Podcast. Top 10 in Great Britain's charts for mental health podcasts. Do you like that? Still, unbelievably. We're talking everything ADHD and pain. And as always, in part 2, we do personal reflections. Just me and James this year, which is why we're like racing through the script. James... Oh, it's part 3. Amazing. James, we're spunk trumpeting, aren't we? Top tips.
We are.
As usual, probably dreadful top tips for pain and pain management with ADHD?
Yeah, pointless and in no way helpful. So it's really interesting in medical circles, Alex, that it's pretty well accepted that pain and pain relief is not something we are good at. As a system of, both clinicians, pharmaceutical companies, for example, the over-reliance on opioids, which are not effective for chronic pain. I was on dihydrocodeine for 12 years for my back. Got addicted to it. Did you ever shit? I shat once a year, and it was of incredible volume and consistency. But I got addicted to them because they're an opioid, and I realized they started giving me migraines. I was getting 15, 16 migraines a month and had to stop, and literally went through cold turkey. I remember giving a talk at the British Science Festival, and I was sweating and shaking like a shitting dog while I was giving this talk to about 200 people in the middle of a week of awfulness. And that's one of the big issues with pain, is that we don't know how to manage it effectively in many different cases, whether it's fibromyalgia, whether it's arthritis, whether it's just having a low pain threshold and needing to not be in pain. And one of the issues, again, with these painkillers, particularly with the ones which are stronger in rabbit ears, is that side effects can often be worse than the pain itself. So we are not good, medically speaking, at treating pain. But that being said, pain is real. Pain is debilitating. And it's something that often people who've never had chronic pain, but back pain's a great example. If you've never had chronic back pain and a colleague of yours at work has chronic back pain, then often one of the attitudes you may often see is one of, yeah, really, or they just swinging the lead. Whereas actually, once you've been in chronic pain and you understand it, you don't often give that reaction. And if ADHD is causing a change in the perception of pain, whether it's an increased or decreased pain threshold or tolerance, that means it's something that should be considered in the workplace, by friends and family. What I'll say, because this is meant to be top tips and not just blathering shit.
What was your tip there?
Fuck off.
Don't
I was saying painkillers are rubbish. I'm getting to it, Alex. I'm getting to my tip.
I like it. Good.
And that is that actually there are alternative ways of managing pain which may or may not work, particularly in ADHD. So we know that for some types of pain, whether it's muscle pain, that there are specific exercises that you can do. Shout out to Mofo Body Mechanic on Instagram, Aaron, because he does some great work on rehabilitation from injuries and pain. But we know that massage can help. Some relaxation techniques, including things like I could never do this, guided imagery, hypnosis, can work in some individuals. Biofeedback, which is where you actually measure the activity in the brain and kind of change your behavior based on that activity. Breathing techniques. It's interesting because I'm going to say acupuncture, even though it doesn't have a strong evidence base. There are some studies in like acupuncture journals which state that it is effective, but if it works, even if it's a placebo effect, if it works for you.
But in the Cochrane review, James, on back pain, it specifically doesn't work, even placebo. Oh, yeah. So I would say that for that, it's the other hippie shit I'm fine with.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I completely get that's fair enough. Moving is generally good for lots of different types of pain, particularly arthritis. So keeping physically active, making sure your weight is well managed, and making sure that movement, comes in a variety of different forms. Even things like Tai Chi can be really helpful. And then finally, again, because trying to avoid saying just take painkillers, because largely they're shit and damaging. There are some natural painkillers. We know that turmeric is as effective as ibuprofen, for example.
Really?
Yeah,
for back pain, is that
for inflammation? It works exactly the same way. COX-2 inhibitor, mate, and there's evidence that it's as effective at doing that. So if you don't want to take painkillers, there are some supplements which have evidence base that they can help with pain. And we did an episode on this a while back. There are some strains of what you hilariously I'll call wacky backy, which are. The evidence isn't great, but there is some evidence that cannabinoids can be effective in treating chronic pain. And I'm not saying go out and buy weed and smoke it. I'm saying, government, please deregulate cannabis for medical use at a faster rate so people who are in chronic pain can get treatment for that pain. What about you, Al? What are your top tips?
I have a question first. What's it like trying to do those alternative ones that take a while, like guided breathing, meditation, if you've got ADHD brain?
I mean, I couldn't. Simple as that.
I also even imagine.
I also believe I'm resistant to hypnosis. And actually, my sister did a course, trained to be a hypnotist. And she made an interesting point. Actually, people with ADHD do dissociate. And one of the things, apparently, when you're taught how to be a hypnotist, if people say, I can't be hypnotized, is to ask them, have you ever driven somewhere and got there and thought, I can't remember the journey, which is literally every journey for me. And I don't know if that's in an ADHD, someone kind of disassociation, mind wandering, as opposed to being able to go into a state and still function. But I couldn't do any of them. I can't do mindfulness. I can't do meditation, even though you can be mindful in doing other activities. Yeah. But we are all different, and some people can. Clearly,
I
mindfulness has been shown. Yeah, it's been shown to be an effective way at helping people deal with their ADHD symptoms. But for me, not a fucking chance.
I've been looking a lot into hypnotherapy because I'm massively skeptical, but I know it's helped people or they feel it has. And there's an eye roll test. Have you seen this? If you look up and if your eyes roll back into your head, apparently it's much more likely to be effective for you. I tried to find a Cochrane review of that, but couldn't. So I'm still looking if anyone has one. Right, I've got a top tip, really. I've got two. One is don't let anyone tell you it's all in the mind. And the reason for that isn't what people think it is. It's this. All pain's all in the mind. All of it. If anybody says to you, oh, yours is, just, it's all in the mind. All pain is all in the mind. If you just pinch yourself on your arm now, and I would like you to, if you did, you're solely feeling that in your mind, not in your arm. You don't feel anything in your arm, even though we think we do. So every sensation, every perception of pain and the processing is in your mind. So people can fuck off with that. So whatever you're feeling is real. My other tip is to quickly remember that if you have got pain, it's often a hint that something is wrong. That RSD of worrying about bothering people or being accused of hypochondria, that isn't your friend if you've got pain. If you've had pain for a little while, don't wait months. Go to a doctor, a proper doctor, not James.
I think just to add to that, I don't know what the evidence is on this, but anecdotally, from the men in my life, Alex Ding, the men in my life are often much worse at admitting they're in pain and seeking out help for this. And what I'd say is, again, don't feel that it's in any way diminishing to be in pain. If you're in pain, as Cockface said, it sometimes means there's a problem. So even though the NHS is stretched, at least, have a chat with somebody, particularly if that pain is chronic and persistent. Okay, product recommendation of the week, and this was taken out of the alternative pain, so we can recommend it, and that's a TENS machine for pretending you're pregnant, it says there, Alex, which you obviously added. So there is actually evidence that TENS machines, transcutaneous electronic nerve stimulation machines, can work for some types of pain, and they definitely have helped me with my neuropathic back pain. So you can now get them cheap as chips. I have a wireless one, which is a little bit more expensive, but it means I'm not attached to a load of wires. So give that a go if you're in pain. It can help, like I say, with lots of different pain types. Thankfully, that's the end now. That was episode 57, apparently, of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we talked about ADHD and pain. As usual, if you've for some weird reason enjoyed this episode, why not support the show and the charity, as otherwise Alex is going to have to auction off one of his hats as an emergency life raft, which will fit probably about 16 people in,
because they've got a big round head. Is that why?
Yeah, massive swollen round head.
Right. Thank you.
As usual, contact us on the socials or through our Discord community if you've got any questions, and we'll see you on Thursday, I guess. Till then, bye
all. Shush,
bye Daisy.
Trigger warning, klaxon, 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 big klaxon. Trigger warning, klaxon, 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 klaxon. Trigger warning.